Live and learn with us in season 3. We're still talking about how we live and learn, how we adapt to change, how we are curious about mentalities, how we learn languages. What is live and learn for you? Welcome to our today's episode, the last episode this calendar year. And what have you learned this year? Every time, or almost every time, when I ask you, what have you learned this week? And we discuss what curiosity brought us to and what interesting things we've discovered. And now when we look back and it's the last episode of the year. So really, what have you learned this year?
Such a lovely year, I need to say. I think I actually, right before December, was thinking that we spent the whole year sitting in our apartment and working in two computers with two different parts of the world, or like with two different domains of industry. But my husband gave us a present to our anniversary, so he just printed out the photos of us over the year, and we have now the whole wall of them, like 100 photos that we actually had, and all those smiles, all those beautiful moments. We managed to travel on Saturdays and Sundays. We tried to go out of our apartment to the lake, to the forest, to I don't know, wherever we were. And my previous birthday and the previous New Year, we actually traveled, and that was an amazing thing. So when I looked at the wall and I understood that this is how much love, affection, support, great smiles, great opportunities we had, then it was a beautiful visualization that the year was not that bad as we're thinking, right? So I guess that this kind of the things, if we try to notice the beautiful things and we try to record them and visualize them all together on one wall, on one digital wall, virtual wall, somehow to get the diary maybe together and look back, this might be a good thing to make a summary of. Of course, it should be balanced somehow. Of course, we can see what was behind those. But I think what I learned this year, that even though that this was the most disruptive year since what, 1945, 40, something like that, a lot of Financial Times, New York Times keep on quoting this. That's their perspective. Even though we were so much scared of this VUCA world, something that we don't know, uncertainty, volatility, we still have our relationships, we still have our families, I still have my parents, and this is something that makes specific invaluable value.
Like learning to live with the uncertainty and to value really precious things, right?
I think, as we said, the word of the year would be not even COVID-19, but resilience, something that we learned. And I think this is a skill that all of us, and me personally, and my parents, and my family learned this year. What about you? What's your gain?
Much simpler, I think. I've learned how to edit podcasts. This is a gain of our project that we are doing. I would never have imagined myself editing audio content. Why would I? But because we wanted to make this project sound better, I gave it a try, and it's up to our listeners to say whether and how much we've improved. But I feel this is something that I never knew how to do before. I never even set a foot there. But this year I have, and I'm happy that I've started. More to come. and still it's live and learn for me this year. As for resilience and value that this year has brought, yeah, of course, more resilience, more skills to react possibly in an adequate way to things that are full of uncertainty, dealing with uncertainty, learning how to support others who are not as resilient as you are. Because, well, I think of myself as of quite a resilient person, and I feel the need to support people who are more vulnerable in stressful situations. So I feel this is more of my task this year, and has been my task this year, to give more support, to add certainty, and also to say it out loud. Guys, it's okay not to be okay. It's okay to feel frightened, scared. And I've said it so many times, discussing things with my students, with young learners, with adult learners, with colleagues, with my family, that yes, living in these uncertain times is not an easy thing to do. And so we're in this together. We're in the same boat, and it's okay not to be okay. Let's sail on.
As for the same boat, I read quite recently the thing that no, we're not in the same boat. We're not at all in the same boat. Everybody's in their own boat, bigger, smaller, faster, or cheaper. We are in the same river, in the same ocean. That depending on how well we are prepared and where was the start. I liked this metaphor because being in the same boat means that you cannot change anything. But being on the same ocean and trying to, I don't know, mend the boat somewhere, improve it, or learn to row and so on, this is might be actually a more accurate metaphor. So I thought that I agreed with this, you know, specification. Would you?
Not at all. I would say we're not in the same water. Each of us has their own waters and own elements. Yeah, so we can agree or disagree with certain metaphors, and it's also a beauty of language and the beauty of our living and communication interaction. Yeah, so I say something, you agree or you disagree, you bring your own metaphor. I like it, but then I disagree.
And I'm
Still, it's
fine with that.
absolutely. And it's like, to me, perceiving other people's metaphors is the most beautiful art for me to look at, because there is so much depth in these metaphors. We all bring our own pieces into it. I've had a lesson today with a student of Italian, and we were discussing how, again, bringing this weird year, and we were discussing Boccaccio, of course, and how his Decameron reflect the same living through hard times, through epidemics, through lockdown, and different characters who, each of whom brought their stories, like metaphors or like pieces of perception of life. And I asked my student to think of how in today's world writers or whoever brings value to creating this Decameron of our time. And when she said that she believed even each person who writes anything that can be read by others sharing their experience creates their part and is an author, one of many authors, then I had my metaphor of kaleidoscope. So all these colored pieces put together constitute in the end the whole vision of what we all create and what somebody can look at and perceive. Okay, so a kind of art, kind of perception, kind of creating a new picture, a new vision, and so on. Especially this year, each of us, when we discuss what we feel, how we are, and we add up to this picture of how we all live, how we all have been living this year. To me, also perceiving this is like perceiving a piece of art, or can be.
Yeah, I think that getting this summary of longer periods is something that takes a lot of meditation, takes a lot of contemplation and analysis, and trying to see what, I wouldn't say assessment, but kind of evaluation, maybe. I don't know if these are the correct words, if we're talking about, giving a feedback to the year behind. And as we are having the Kirkpatrick's model of the building up a feedback, right? Did I learn? Did I like it? Did I enjoy it? What was the learning? What was the impact? And what is the result? What will be changed over the with the skill that I received? Yeah. So this is something that we can as well try and think those summaries may bring. Of course, we can concentrate on something epic and something that is like the highlights of the year. But again, in my understanding, we should also remember sad moments, remember hardships, and try to not to exaggerate the picture that everything was all in pink, and rosy and petals and so on. No, not at all. And this year was one of the examples. But still, we're building our narrative, right? And we are building the story of our lives. We are trying to tell the story of our lives. And narrative is something that you're putting on as the columns and something that you're living out, right? Something that is taken away. And in order to understand what is the value of what we're bringing further into our life, even it's New Year or the birthday, right? For me, this is very close thing. So I've always been doing this kind of the reflection in the same dates, right? Yeah, this is like building up our own narrative of the story that we have to tell, we have to share.
So I've lived this year. What was it for me? What am I taking with me? What do I want to change maybe? What other story would I like to tell next year?
Who are the
Therefore,
heroes of the story
oh
this
yeah.
year? Yeah, what were the dragons of this year? What were the fights of this year, and what were the victories?
Oh yeah, that reminds of Campbell's model of, not model, Campbell's structure of myth. If we look at a year as a story, then as a heroic story, then I'm a protagonist. I'm the main character of this journey.
Then you're super lucky if you're in that position. A lot of people are not taking themselves as protagonists.
Yeah, okay. This was the topic of my PhD that I never finished, but I continue living my journey as a protagonist. You're absolutely right here, because when a person is not a protagonist, but maybe a victim, if we take the opposite position, or just a character, just any character of this journey, governed or led or directed by someone else, well, I don't know. It's just not my position. That's why I cannot judge.
Then it's a sad story.
To me, it would be a sad story, but maybe to someone it's okay just to play a role. Shakespeare comes back to us. We're all playing our roles on the stage of life, and maybe someone directs that show, directs that performance, and maybe someone feels okay with just playing the role directed and scripted for them. We don't even script our podcast. We just act and talk and interact and are
Enjoy.
active protagonists in
Yeah,
enjoying this journey.
that's
Mm.
true. That's true. You know, yeah. I think actually this is something that I learned so much over the year, being much more spontaneous than I would assume I'm able to. I think with our podcast, having a weekly session of a safe environment where we can talk and we hear each other and we support each other and we discover so many interesting topics and sub levels and ways out and examples. It brought me a lot of spontaneity because when we put the record button on, like we never know what we're going to be talking about, and this is a pure co-creation for me. So I would definitely say thank you for being in this journey
Thank
with
you for
me.
being in this journey together. Could you say here we're in the same boat?
Yes,
Or what other metaphor would you bring?
because we are doing something together, and I think we have quite clear roles on this boat, and I think we're rowing in the same direction at least, and enjoying the journey. Yeah, might be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, back to Campbell's structure. It's interesting. First of all, if you are a hero, then you are a protagonist and you start your journey. You're, yeah,
Heroine, please.
yeah, protagonist. Then we are invited by some force to start the journey, yeah, as a Miss Hero does. But then we choose to to hit the road or not. And mostly, yes, we do hit the road and go on. And then we help each other on the way. In the end, as far as I remember in Campbell's model, in the end, a hero, a protagonist, then comes back being changed on the way.
Yeah,
And this is an important feature. And when we come closer to the end of the year, and I'd like to talk maybe more about it, it feels like finishing a journey, and we try to assess how much we have changed on the way.
that's beautiful. That is beautiful, and this is how all the fables finish, right? That the person is not the same person as they were in the beginning. And I think this is something that, again, some people get scared of and do not do this summary of the year, summary of up to their own personal year by the birthday, because might be quite scary to find yourself being another, being changed. And I really think that if more and more people had a culture and the habit of looking back each day and analyze what happened, why happened, and to see the progress, just like writing a diary, and then summarizing a month, summarizing a quarter, summarizing a year, summarizing 5 years, and so on. It would give much more reflection and critical understanding which steps were taken, which steps brought where, which accelerated the journey, which maybe stumbled upon, and how much we changed. How do we see in completely different eyes, from completely different perspective, who we are now? Maybe this is actually growing up, because what my husband says that we are not growing up, we are getting older. Do you actually
You
write your summaries in the end of the year?
never. Mm-mm. I don't even remember if I ever had.
And to your birthday?
Nonetheless.
No?
Mhm. No. Anyway, I understand what you mean when you say that people might not do that for the fear of
Hmm.
finding out things.
Might be,
Yeah,
yeah.
but
I'm not
might be,
claiming that.
yeah, might be. I'm quite open to this as well. Anyway, even some moments that coincide with the dates or with commemorations make me feel especially fragile or sad on those days, and also spontaneously on any other day of the year. I don't know, maybe another thing would be if you're open to this sadness, to any kind of feelings, to completion, to whether you have achieved something you wanted to or not on any day of the year. I rather like this idea of assessing in the evening whether you are satisfied with your day or not. How does it make you feel? But also, like, I don't
Yeah,
know,
I think it's important part of letting it go.
as well.
For
And
for me,
then,
for me
mhm,
definitely this evening assessment, evening shower, which takes all of those problems away,
mhm,
which just relaxes and I don't know, I feel like everything's gone. I let everything go. Okay, I might have a longer shower when it was a difficult day, or quite a quick one if everything was all right
mhm,
and I am resourceful enough so I don't need, to have this reflection, which takes time, right?
mhm. Uh,
For me, it doesn't matter if I don't write it, but I think
mhm.
that's the same thing that I'm doing.
What you said about narratives is something I feel better because when we build our narrative, our story of life constantly, and then when we do something, it either fits with what your narrative is or it doesn't. And then you just don't do what doesn't fit, or you try to install it somehow into your narrative or change your narrative if you decide to pick up that thing and do something that before would not fit perfectly into your story of life. And that helps me personally to feel more whole when I choose whether to do something or not based on what my narrative is. Yeah, something like that. Then I don't need, maybe it's just pure fantasy because maybe it's absolutely not the case, but maybe it is. Then I don't need to write have done list. If
Hmm.
every time I choose something, I try to find the correlation with my narrative. Yeah, something like that, or
Like
maybe
what
not.
I'm trying to understand, and correct me if I got your idea, is that you're trying to reflect if your every next step is aligned with what
Yeah.
you're heading to, with your interests, with your needs, with your wishes. And if where you are on this fork on the road, so which way aligns with where you're going, or you decide to take a turn.
Maybe I don't even know exactly what the destination is, but I just enjoy the road. And if I like the pace, I'll continue doing like that. And then if I stumble into something, I see whether I need to turn or to overcome this obstacle or to just move it away from my road. I don't know. A metaphor would be like this. in the end of the day, would I ever think to write a list of those stones that I have overcome or moved, or I don't know.
Yeah,
But
but
but maybe it's a good idea for someone who appreciates every step, every stone, every milestone, yeah, to celebrate
yeah,
in
but
order to feel that yes, it aligns.
yeah, but milestones are the very same columns in our narratives, right? That we build upon,
Mm-hmm.
and it's up to us to decide what was a milestone, what wasn't, right? How much value do we attribute to a life event? What about the resolutions? Do you understand them as a to-do list or as a wish list?
I also see a wish list as a to-do list, to be honest. What do you put on your wish list? What kind of things do you put there?
Let's start with the idea that I'm not a list person. I never write shopping list. I never do the to-do list. I think the last to-do list that I did was when I was getting things to the summer camp, like
Hmm.
when I was 15 maybe. And I hated it so much that I wanted to grab what I think would be necessary, not what I have to bring. And
No, wait. What about getting documents ready for
that's
applying
why
for a
I hated
visa?
it. And my husband loves them, and he does them, and he
Oh,
has the Excel files with everything he
okay,
takes, and he can share with me some of them, and I could just tick what I've done so
okay,
far and send them back. Yeah, I understand the nice feeling of ticking things out, right? Okay, done, 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 done. But writing them, this is so not me. Like, even if we need a lot of things to do, I would definitely make a list of like four important things in my head and forget about it. I have them in my mind. Just like, when we
Ah,
were
you have them in your mind, do you?
I don't put there anything more than three or four. So I don't have
Okay.
20, 25 things. Because when he does this, it's like 45 things to do when we were relocating. That was a list of, oh my goodness. And each of those tasks was linked with another link where to get everything. That was crazy. And what I do with the lists is I just don't do them. So I do the prioritizing and I do those three, four things that I put into priorities right away. So this is what, for example, if I have on this week, I need to get prepared for one exam, I need to fill in the forms and they need to assess other students' works, for example, during this week. And I understand that this is something that super priority. And whenever I have time between the classes or sessions or between other things that I'm doing routinely, they will be the first things that I will start doing. But
And you keep them in mind.
well, those three, yeah, I have
Yeah.
no problem with that. But
Okay.
the list of more than three things, it's just like killing me. To-do list or a wish list becomes a vicious list.
Okay.
Like a vicious
Nice.
cycle, like never ending. It
Mhm.
becomes the circle that eats, the snake that eats itself. When I go to the supermarket, I want to get something that excites me, that gives me pleasure of having it. Or if I suddenly see something that I don't know, fresh and great and so on, but was not in my shopping list, what am I not supposed to get that? Or, for example, if there is some seasonal things that are brought and I just didn't think of them, I would definitely buy a pumpkin the first time when it is in the market to get a pumpkin soup or something like that.
Mhm.
But I wouldn't be thinking of that. I need to go and buy pumpkin. What if it's not there? What am I supposed to do? Rethink all the list?
It's just amazing because it works so differently for all of us. If I have things I prioritize this week or I have to do this week, Do you know what I do? I don't keep them in mind. I put them on my calendar immediately so that I know when exactly I have time to do them. I don't keep them in mind like this will be the first thing I will do between the lessons. Now, if I have this spot between the lessons, I immediately put this to-do thing there so that I do it then. And I never think about it again until a notification comes that I need to do it now.
Well, this is your approach, and I know that you adore this and that you love to have the things in portions when you plan them. And this is the beauty of ruling yourself what to do. In my understanding, for me, this is for example, if I have a break between the classes, or for example, if one class was suddenly cancelled or rescheduled and I have an hour and a half of free time, I think I'm much more flexible person and I would definitely put something that I have to do or I want to do to get rid of this and just, to take it out. Or if that fits my wish and nice, so I would probably go outside and have an hour of walk watching the sun, for example, rather than doing so. So basically, I always try to leave an opportunity for me to decide what is best for me here and now. I prime this rather than having everything allocated to the time slots. Cool. Nice to know. Today I learned.
Today I learned. Today I learned again how different we are.
Cheers to that.
So, cheers to that. So back to cheers to that. You drink tea, I drink coffee.
Cheers to that.
Cheers to that.
You drink coffee, I drink tea, my dear.
Back to New Year resolutions or to wish lists. I think it's time to go to
neither.
New Year resolutions. Neither. As for New Year resolutions, do you write them? Have you ever?
The very idea that this is a list gets on my nerves. Yeah, it gets me agitated and like, what? No, thank you.
Yeah, a couple of times I've written New Year resolutions, and if I didn't forget about them, then I did what was on that list in January. That's all.
For the year.
End of story. End of story. Yeah. In case I didn't forget about having written the list.
This is exactly the case. How long do you keep in your memory that you have this list? Like by February, March? Do you remember what you wrote there?
No. And this is the neuroscience says that this is one of the reasons why people don't fulfill their New Year resolutions, just because it's unnatural to keep them in mind. When we make New Year resolutions, we dream. We tend to overestimate how much we can do in a year and underestimate how much we can do in an hour. More or less, the tendency is this. So we overestimate how much we can do. We write a list of 12 items, thinking, hoping that we can do one thing in a month. Then life happens. And looking back, you see that you've done two things, hopefully, and you feel you're a loser, you feel you cannot do things, you feel that's you impersonal, you feel you are not good enough, and many people report to having those feelings. Then what neuroscience says is very simple. If I may share some of the results, it's not the only research, of course, but this one was presented by Dr. Susan Weinschenk. And she gives some points. Let's discuss whether it can apply or not, or whether it can be good advice or a good tip. So the first is pick small, concrete actions.
Project management rule number one.
The second one is use visual and or auditory cues.
Project management rule number 2.
Excellent. Number 3 is decide what you want, not what you don't want. Don't say, I don't want to have this habit. Say what you want in the end. What do you want to achieve?
And this is a nice one.
I like it too.
I think this is kind of a reframing. I know a person who, for the last 5 years, wants to quit the job. Every time we communicate, she says, I want to quit this stupid job. I want to quit this. Just quit. I think this is actually deframing or reframing or paraframing. Can we have paraphrase or paraframe?
We can have whatever we want on this podcast.
Yeah, this is our own territory. So
we can create whatever word we want.
Yeah, so it's a nice thing that, to paraphrase, I want a better job, or I want another salary, I want more free time, or I want more interesting tasks, or I need more responsibility or less responsibility. So when you formulate that, you're at least making one step further.
Yeah, and so this tip is also based on neuroscience, saying that it's easier for our brain network to work on an intention stated in an affirmative way. Yeah. Be careful, watch your step, whatever that is formulated as a positive statement and not negative.
This very idea that if we formulate the sentence with no or don't, the cosmos cannot hear the word no and still makes the very thing. So in the cosmos, I think that was the neuroscience talking to magical people who perceive the world in a magical way. But what I really heard from this is try never to formulate future tenses with negative. And this is something that I once applied, and I will never come. Never say never. I won't do this. Never say won't. I won't ever talk to her. Never say won't. So it's like, instead of never say never, I had this rule for myself in like watching my own speech, watching my own formulations, not to formulate future with no sentences.
So when we say, I want in the future, I want to do something, or I want to have something,
or
in the future, I am, exactly. Or in the future, I am something or somebody, or in the future, I am doing this or that. In English, it's very clear that when we use the present continuous tense for future actions, it's as if they were already reality. And it's wonderful, I find. Yeah. At least in English. In other languages, it is definitely different.
For sure. The philosophy of language and the language of philosophy. But the way we speak does formulate how we attribute things to reality. That's true.
Yeah, true. Okay, so affirmative rather than negative way of formulating our intentions makes it easier for our brain networks to elaborate the thing. And the final tip that Dr. Weinschenk gives is write a new self-story. And this is the thing that we discussed. Write a new narrative. And then one of the things she writes, and I just love it, is that most of decision making based on self-stories happens unconsciously. You strive to be consistent. You want to make decisions that match your idea of who you are. Therefore, you just make your decisions unconsciously if you have a clear narrative, or if you have a clear story of yourself.
That's why it is super important to see what milestones do you put into your narrative to write your story, to describe your journey.
So if we come to making New Year resolutions, if we want to make them, or if our listeners want to make New Year resolutions, what could we suggest here based on neuroscience, based on our understanding of how language works?
Know yourself and what works best for you, and do specifically as you feel is correct and aligned with what you are doing according to your own vision of yourself. Grow your mindset and set your goals.
You teased me with research that is related to the topic of coming into the new year.
This is a research by University of Liverpool, and it had its focus on language performance. They were trying to study how bilingual speakers' ability to speak a second language is improved after they consumed a low dose of alcohol. So this is October 2017 when the study was published in the Journal of Psychopharmacology. It's super interesting that the New Year bubbles, and this is how it is connected to the New Year, the low dose of alcohol, which improves our ability to speak the second language. Like, we all know that not like a lot and not being drunk, but a little bit like giggling dose of alcohol impairs cognitive and motor functions, right? So it includes these functions include the ability to remember, to pay attention, right? And they are really sensitive to the alcohol. And what was super funny here, they studied native German speakers who were studying in Dutch university and learned to speak right in Dutch recently. So they had to consume a low dose of alcohol. Can you imagine this methodology? Can you imagine a person writing this methodology in a scientific paper? Consume either a low dose of alcohol or a controlled beverage that contained no alcohol. Before, they chatted with the experimenter. Of course, they are the scientists, so they should be the scientific measures to this. They calculated the exact dose of alcohol varied depending on the participant's body weight. Can you imagine this? And that was like equivalent of just under a pint of beer for a 70-kilo male. Oh my goodness, this is so funny. So they actually started to speak with native Dutch speakers, and they had to self-evaluate themselves and to get the observer ratings. So of course they found out that being under a little bit of bubbles improved their speaking on the second language. The chat was audio recorded, and participants' foreign language skills were subsequently rated by two native Dutch speakers who didn't know if the participant had consumed alcohol or not.
Okay. So the audio recording was assessed.
Of course. Participants also rated their own Dutch language skills during the conversation in self-ratings.
And was it taken into consideration in this research somehow? Was it important how they self-rate?
The researchers found that participants who had consumed alcohol had significantly better observer ratings for their Dutch language, specifically better pronunciation, compared to those who didn't consume alcohol. However, alcohol had no effect on self-ratings of Dutch language skills. What happens with the bubbles? Again, if we're talking about science, if we're drinking, for example, still beverages containing alcohol, or bubbly beverages containing alcohol, including beer, prosecco, champagne, cava, metodo tradicional, or even cider, which is very low in alcohol but has bubbles, or anything with tonic like gin tonic or something else which contains bubbles. The alcohol consumption is very, very different because we already receive our first dose in our mouth. Because the bubbles break, the oxygen releases into the mouth directly, right? Before it gets to the stomach, you already have tiny, but still this, peaks of alcohol already. So your blood starts getting saturized with this. So that's why you don't need to wait too long, and you can already get your effect if this is something you're heading to. What we can come up with the idea if you do want to increase your second language skills through this fantastic method adopted by the British scientists. It might be a curious way to try it out. The wine and the bubble contained beverages might have very different results or very different effect.
And based on this research, you could find it useful if you are a native German speaker and you're learning Dutch as your second language.
And you're being observed.
And you're a male.
That's why when we're talking about the British scientists have discovered that, I normally tend either to just have a funny smile and read this as an anecdote, or actually to go to the DOI where the article is and actually read what was the methodology, what was the situation, what they actually tested, how they tested it. Okay, so here we are, right in front of our new year. Can you imagine that 1/5 of this 21st century is already gone? Another thing that I might actually say that I enjoyed learning through the last year is talking about all those beautiful topics that we discussed over the 3 seasons of our podcast. So we discussed an amazing number of fantastic topics to my own understanding. So we discussed the soft skills, teaching and learning them. We discussed how to learn during vacation, how to get into the new semester. We discussed the teacher's well-being, intercultural networking. One of the best episodes we had was on growth mindset versus fixed mindset, and then followed by the art of science and learning. We were talking about the 21st centuries for school educators and education management. We discussed how to learn and teach cultures and build up the culture awareness, but also how to build up the resilience skills. We were discussing how to get inspired and how to inspire other people, and how to learn to live as an expert, how to build up the transferable skills for online, offline, and hybrid classrooms teaching, how to apply those transferable skills for employability. We discussed how to celebrate such things as New Year, the World's Teachers' Days. We discussed how to hack a language. We had our guests here. We enjoyed talking to our guests, and we will be doing so the next year. So whenever we're talking about the milestones that will build our narrative, try to see what precious and valuable things there are, and let's see what we come up with next year. See you in 2021, everyone. See you next year. Happy New Year!
Follow us. Live and learn.
Live and learn.
Curious about what we discuss next? Please subscribe to Live and Learn podcast and join our community on social networks. Live and learn.